do you mean, Chester?
Dusty, sir. Just plain dusty. It's only spring and already the plaza's vulgar with dust.
Streets in Texas are all grass, Chester?
No, sir, but they're better than you'd think there'd be some way of fixing it.
Dodger's growing, Chester. Maybe someday it won't look so bad to you.
I don't aim to live that long, sir.
Well, I'm glad you got that much figured out anyway.
He says the province's race data show a similar pattern in information in other jurisdictions across the country. Alberta is moving into the next phase of its reopening plan, but only partially. Premier Jason Kenney says restrictions are easing on libraries and indoor fitness centers as of Monday. Measures remain in place for hotels, banquet halls, community halls, and conference centers. Kenney says that he understands why some might be frustrated.
But we cannot and we must not allow exponential growth to start to take hold, driven by these new, more contagious variants, as we've seen in many countries around the world, because to do so would end up in weeks jeopardizing our healthcare system.
COVID-19 hospitalizations have fallen well below the 450 benchmark necessary to move forward. There were 257 hospitalizations reported in the province's latest update. An Indigenous advisor will be assisting BC's police watchdog looking into a shooting death near Tofino over the weekend. On Saturday evening, 2 RCMP officers were called out to investigate a woman in distress call when an interaction took place in which one man was shot and killed and another was taken into custody. The RCMP isn't commenting on the matter as it's being investigated by the Provincial Independent Investigations Office. It's believed the woman was being held against her will. If you were making plans to get to Comic-Con in San Diego this year, you'll have to wait.
Hello, Hall H!
No big crowds gathering this summer to hear the latest from the stars of their favorite geeky movies, TV shows, and other projects. San Diego Comic-Con, the pop culture.
Followed by Mr. Freed.
Thank you. I think I understand where the question is coming from, but no, the world has not abandoned Yemen. And of course, we trust the UN. It's our trusted partner in not only this.
Canadian division were in action Monday night.
Misinterpreted. This is the world news from the BBC. Israel's Supreme Court has ruled on a long-running and contentious issue by allowing more non-Orthodox Jewish converts to immigrate to Israel and become citizens. Israeli law grants rights of abode and citizenship to Jews from abroad, but conservative groups insist any converts to Judaism must have undergone a strict Orthodox conversion. The Interior Minister Aryeh Deri, an ultra-Orthodox rabbi, says he'll work to amend legislation so only conversions adhering to strict Jewish law are accepted. An American father and son are due to arrive in Tokyo shortly following their extradition on charges they helped the disgraced former head of Nissan flee Japan in 2019. Prosecutors allege Special Forces veteran Michael Taylor and his son Peter received $1.3 million for helping conceal Carlos Ghosn aboard a private jet to Lebanon, which has no extradition treaty with Japan. Mr. Ghosn was on bail facing financial misconduct charges. He denied wrongdoing. A group of 8 teenagers from across Australia are beginning a class action lawsuit against
I watch clips. They just take way too long. I just don't have the attention span to sit there for 2 hours, 3 hours. I know that sometimes people say, what about the monologues? You know, so-and-so's got to, you know what? If it was really great, I'll see it later.
People say all that to you,
Yeah, but...
Really? Oh, we missed their news. Shit.
Vaccinations and health in general. So I'm confident that this is the way to go.
Government figures show that as of Monday, over 21,000 people across the country have been vaccinated. However, there are also a lot of people who are skeptical of the vaccine's efficacy. Tawanda Mupati is a local journalist. He urges the government to educate people on the importance of vaccination.
The authorities that are in place
must educate the masses on the dangers of the COVID-19 pandemic and the importance of taking in this COVID-19 vaccine. So now that we're in the midst of this deadly pandemic, I think it's high time that we should embrace science rather than settling on stereotypes, on negativity and stuff.
The Zimbabwean government is planning to vaccinate 10 million people, 60% of its population. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Gao Junya, reporting from Harare, Zimbabwe.
Iran has received the first consignment of the Chinese COVID-19 vaccine from Sinopharm. The cargo of 250,000 doses of vaccine donated by China was handed over to the health ministry. Earlier, Iran imported the Sputnik vaccine from Russia, which was administered to healthcare workers and other high-risk groups in the first phase of the rollout. The COVID-19 pandemic has so far killed over 60,000 people in Iran. And with more on this, Sui spoke to Dr. Javad Hirania from the Center for Scientific Research in Middle East Strategic Studies in Iran.
How will the Chinese vaccine contribute to Iran's fight against the pandemic?
In the current situation where there is a limited number of vaccines and each country gives priority people within its own country, sending this vaccine from China to Iran is important. At present, with the prevalence
So why is the journalist saying the government has to tell people about this vaccine? That makes no sense.
Last year, she's now moved her activism on. Why? I caught up with her a little while ago on a short break from her school day.
Is this?
My point is that the Vickery coal mine, over the next 25 years, it would produce 168 million tons of coal. And, you know, that's a lot of coal. And when burnt, that will produce a huge amount of carbon emissions.
Thank you, white girl.
Further fueling the climate crisis.
Proving it's genetic.
Well, my future
just
depends a lot on the climate crisis and if we resolve it in time.
Intrinsically.
I may not have a livable future if, when I'm older, the climate crisis is still going on and there's still, bushfires, monsoons,
can you explain how coal's
tornadoes,
different
all
from
that.
oil? Because you seem
The court
to think it's
injunction
all carbon.
says that you and your group are representing every person in the world under the age of 18. That's a pretty bold claim, isn't it?
Well, our case is a class action. It's on behalf of young people all around the world who are impacted by climate change.
Australia is not a
And the
competent
situation is the same for everyone, in your opinion. Is it? You're taking it on yourself to talk for everyone's future.
Well, climate change affects everyone, no matter where they live. The impacts are particularly severe with people who live in the most vulnerable areas, such as First Nation communities, people of colour, regional communities, women and young people.
But one group who would be impacted by this would be the children and the future children of the people who would get jobs from this project. So they would say, and the businessmen would say, they've got rights too, and you're trampling all over them.
Well, with that argument,
Opposite of original.
we don't want to get people out of jobs. We're not doing this to, make people have no jobs. What we're saying is we need to move to renewable energy. So if we shut down this coal mine, then in its place could be a solar farm or a wind farm. And in the long run, a job now, is that the same as a job for children 5 generations past? Or will they even have a planet to have a job on?
Right. Okay. So taking the big picture again, I mean, the other issue is whether this is the right way to do it, because people vote on these issues at every Australian election. And every Australian election is won by politicians who want to support the industries that make big coal mines. So that you could say that you're going against the will of what most Australians want.
Well, there's actually been surveys, and in the past year, it's been found that 86% of Australians want action on climate change, and unfortunately, the Morrison government isn't really doing anything, as we can see, because what we're trying to get in this court case is for Susan Ley, the environmental minister, to not approve this coal mine.
And we spoke to you when this idea was first mooted, and legal things always take a terribly long time. Now we've got to the stage that the class action is actually going to be heard in the federal court in Melbourne. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing that I can't be physically there, but honestly, it is so empowering and it's so incredible to see how
know
far this has gone from
It's
just
not going anywhere.
from having a message that's reaching out to me saying, hey, would you like to be part of this class action? It didn't really feel real then, but now that it's in court and it's actually being active right now, it's unbelievable.
Izzy Raj Seppings speaking to us just a few minutes ago, back in school now and very disappointed, as you heard, that she can't actually travel to Melbourne from her home because of COVID travel restrictions in order to support her claim. She's one of the kids who's got a claim against a large coal mining project in the federal court in Melbourne.
Newsday BBC World Service Cloud McDonald, Lawrence Pollard with you. Let's bring you that breaking news now coming out of Nigeria. The girls kidnapped from a boarding school in the town of Jangebe in the northwestern Nigerian state of Zamfara have just been released. Let's cross straight away to the BBC's Ishaq Khalid in Abuja. Ishaq, what can you tell us?
The Canadians heard about
what we
them
know
and
so
decided to give
far
up now.
from the state governor himself, Bello Matawalle, is that the girls have been released, and 279 in total. They said that the 317 figure given earlier was inaccurate because the girls were abducted when they were asleep. Some of them ran away. So for now, 279 have been released and no girl has been left behind, according to officials. And when I was speaking to the state officials, I could hear the voices of the girls at the background.
Oh, of course. So that means that's really what it was. It wasn't running a TV show.
The governor said that no ransom was paid before their release, but they used repentant, bandits. I mean, those criminal gangs who laid down their arms and they were pardoned. So they used them to negotiate with those who abducted the girls. But ransom is something that officials here rarely admit that has been paid. But many believe that in most cases, when people are abducted, ransom is paid.
Yeah, it's interesting because President Muhammadu Buhari said when the girls were abducted, we're not going to give in to blackmail, and yet we have this situation quickly resolved, whereas other cases have dragged on for a long time. So is that the feeling that maybe that's what they had to resort to get these girls out safely?
Well, so far there's no clarity as to whether definitely ransom was paid, but of course negotiations were held. And the president said that his government would not yield to blackmail, but this appears to be, the release appears to be mostly the effort of the state government in Zamfara state. And of course, federal troops were also there, but the governor already had an initiative for amnesty, for criminal gangs who lay down their arms to be pardoned. So perhaps, according to him, this is what has really yielded to the release of these girls. But the president, of course, said that the government would not be, cowed, would not be blackmailed by these armed criminal gangs. And this abduction is not actually the first. It's the third in 3 months. One in Kankara town in neighboring Katsina state in December, more than 300. They were released also after negotiations. Then another 2 weeks ago in the town of Kagara in north central state of Niger, they were also released. So these abductions have been happening, and many people are now saying that more needs to be done to ensure security, because the question many are asking perhaps is where next, because the insecurity is quite rampant and many people fear for security across the country.
And just briefly, Ishaq, obviously the most notorious abduction was back in 2014, 276 girls kidnapped from Chibok by Islamic militants, Boko Haram. But from what you're saying, this is a new tangent. This is a criminal element who have jumped on this bandwagon.
Exactly. There's the insecurity in the northeast of Nigeria, where Boko Haram has been waging an insurgency for more than a decade now. But in the northwest and some other states across the country, mostly what we see is incidents of kidnapping for ransom, mostly by armed criminal gangs who basically are out there to make money rather than ideology.
Thank you for the update. The BBC's Ishaq Khalid there talking to us from Abuja. The news is just breaking that the girls kidnapped from a boarding school there. 270 odd of them. The number's still revising because some of them ran away. But they have now been repatriated and they are safe and well. Reports coming out of Nigeria.
Just to remind you once again, it was the issue more widely was looked at on the Africa Daily podcast. So go and find that if you can, where you find your podcast, Africa Daily, made by the team with Alan Kasuja, looking at the issue of why are kids being kidnapped in Nigeria. As you heard there from Nigeria, it's happened 3 times at least just in recent weeks. With the sport now at 16 minutes past hour, Alistair Ross out.
Hello, the man in charge of African football will find out.
That's ludmerlaw.com.
This is Charles Adler Tonight. Once again, here is Charles Adler.
Asking you whether you've discovered something on the screen, something on TV during COVID that has allowed you to escape from COVID. Drama, comedy, doesn't matter to me. All of this brought on by the Golden Globes last night and awards going on. The show that's really tickled my fancy lately. That would be Schitt's Creek. So this is Diane texting in from Calgary, Charles. I have loved watching The Crown on Netflix. Wow. Crown picked up 2 awards last night that I know of.
He hasn't mentioned it all fucking year.
But entirely on the humanitarian mandate. We also need to work on a more long-term development assistance and find better synergies between the humanitarian responses, the long-term development needs, and the peace-building efforts that we can do in Yemen. We need a holistic approach, and we need all resources available in the different work streams to come together for better results in Yemen. Again, this was a pledge. This is the pledge we have. We now may have to make sure that these resources are allocated, reimbursed as soon as possible. Every week counts. And then the work continues. And we are ready, Sweden stands ready to continue supporting this work to prevent famine and to find ways towards sustaining peace also in Yemen. Thank you, Melissa.
And Mr. Bessler, would you like to respond?
To underline perhaps all the 53 speakers were very clear in their opinion. No, we do not want to let down Yemen. We will want to prevent famine, and we want to support Yemen. Now, of course, these commitments have to be translated into figures in the end. And in this regard, as the SG said, this is a start, it's a down payment. Let's continue our efforts. And the idea was now taken up with great interest. Switzerland stands ready. Mark, let us know, and more than happy to, together with Sweden, to come up in a couple of months to see where we stand, what can be done more, where we have to reiterate our efforts in order to get the money together to address the needs on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we come to our final question to Mark Lowcock from Jennifer Rigby from The Telegraph from the UK. What is your response to the UK's proposed plan to cut aid to Yemen by 50%? Do you think the UK is letting the people of Yemen and the international community down in a moment of great need?
Well, let me just firstly, since this is, I think, the last response I'll give during the press conference, Melissa, I just want again to thank very much indeed both Manuel and Perels and Fried for the role their governments have played in bringing everybody together today, and for their generosity as countries, and for the enormous hard work that they and their teams have put into enabling us to hold the event today. My understanding of what the UK minister announced was that the UK will provide at least £87 million this year. As the journalist from the Daily Telegraph said, that represents less than 50% of what the UK provided during 2020. I said earlier that some countries have particular responsibilities in Yemen. The UK is one of those. The UK in the past has played a leadership role on Yemen. And I draw your attention again to what the Secretary General said, that we are asking some countries, and the UK is obviously in this category, to consider again what they can do to help stave off the worst famine the world has seen in decades. There's a lot at stake here. Let us not be the generation that allows this terrible, heinous...
Want to be. We're the Muppets. Joy, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know why I'm getting the I'll tell you.
But in my sense is that, religiosity is a push, but there are other factors at play. I think the situation in Afghanistan, specifically Eastern Afghanistan, is boosting these Pakistani militant organizations. They are based there. Then Pakistani state policies have in some ways backfired. Pakistani state is comfortable with some forms of militancy inside the country, and these anti-state militants are able to leverage those policies to their advantage, create space for themselves.
Let's take a zoom out then. I was just going to say, if we zoom out a little bit, the wider politics at play between India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, whose interest is it that this militancy is on the rise? Because it plays into the hand of certain state partners, doesn't it?
So the Pakistani state alleges that the Indian government is behind the revival of the GDP. I have not seen much evidence of that. I think that the Afghan government has provided some space to these Pakistani militant actors, but really the major external boosters of these Pakistani groups are the Afghan Taliban, the insurgent group, which is on the march and appears to be ascendant in Afghanistan due to the U.S. withdrawal from there. I think that's a major boost for these Pakistani groups. Then, of course, Al-Qaeda. So Al-Qaeda has long been allied with these Pakistani militant movements, specifically the TTP, which is behind the recent violence. And Al-Qaeda has been trying to revive these groups, has been politically advising them, has been telling them to unify and remove their differences, improve their target selection. So I, more than states, I see powerful non-state actors boosting these Pakistani militant organizations.
Thank you for the update. We appreciate your time. Asvandia Mir, security analyst and fellow at the Center for International Security and Cooperation at Stanford University in the US.
24 minutes past the hour. This is Newsday. We were hearing from the UN how they were trying to raise funds for the world's worst humanitarian crisis, Yemen. The upshot, I'm sorry to say, was rather disappointing. They raised in their funding conference less than half what they wanted, $1.7 billion out of the $4 billion they wanted from contributing countries. So here's a picture of the need. In education, children are still learning in Yemen against all the odds in the middle of the civil war. Our international correspondent Orla Gurin and producer Claire Reid have sent this report from an extraordinary school on the outskirts of the city of Taiz.
Wow. The school has just come into sight. It's a ruin. It's a shell. You can see right through it. It's hard to believe it's still standing. In the yard of the Al Wahda Milad Primary School, it's time for morning assembly. Hundreds of boys and girls clap their hands and stamp their feet. The school was occupied by Houthi rebels in 2016 and became a battleground. It reopened a year later, what was left of it, but this is still a frontline area. The deputy head, Amin al-Wafi, tells me Houthi rebels and Yemeni government forces exchange fire nearby. Many teachers in Yemen haven't been paid their government salaries in years. At this school, some don't turn up anymore. In one of the classrooms, we find a substitute. Ahmed Raghib, a 9-year-old in a blue shirt, is taking the class. We're told he's the best student in the school. He's full of character with a ready smile, and he has been blind from birth. Ahmed plans to be a teacher himself. In the meantime, he's got a wish list.
Already doing it.
We want a new school. Chairs, doors, windows, blackboards, lights, and batteries. The most important thing is that they work. Also, we want rebuilding on the top floor and a door to keep out the wind and the sun. We would like also a window so that the rain does not drop on us.
Ahmed, what's that noise?
That's gunshots.
Do you hear that often, Ahmed?
Yes, I hear it all the time, every time. Sometimes explosions, sometimes gunshots, everything.
And is that scary, Ahmed, when you hear the bullets?
Yes, I hear the noise and I think I'm going to die. I get scared if anything happens. I get frightened from missiles and shelling. Once we were studying and we saw a missile flying over us. We got scared that day and we left. We didn't stay.
Ahmed, when you are studying and learning, and especially when you are teaching, do you feel happy? You look happy.
Learning is good, especially when I teach. Right now, I teach the Quran and Arabic reading.
Well, I'm now upstairs in the school. It's an absolutely incredible sight. There is a gigantic hole in the middle of the floor. I can see straight through down to the bottom floor where there are a group of boys having a lesson. And just above them, on this floor, there are another group of little boys sitting down with their copybooks in their hands, and they're responding to the teacher's questions. It's not easy to teach or learn among the rubble in a war zone, but it's this or nothing, says the principal, Jamila Al-Wafi.
We have a difficult choice. Either we stop and education stops and we lose a whole generation, or we continue with the danger. We prefer to continue with the danger so this generation succeeds.
Despite all the difficulties, the principal says most of the pupils here never miss a day. They cling to their education, now more than ever. Others don't get the chance. According to the United Nations, 500,000 Yemeni children are out of school because of the conflict.
Ola Gurin, introducing you to Ahmed from Taiz.
You're listening to the BBC World Service.
The wave of lockdown. Thought we were going to be in lockdown for 2 or 3 weeks. Who would have known?
We get all of our groceries delivered. I teach from my computer.
It's not to go out of the house as much as possible.
In a world that's constantly changing, we keep you informed by looking forward.
Talk to your financial institution or visit cdic.ca to find out.
Yeah, because you're not sure if your bank is insured by the feds, eh?
The lunch spot that gets us through the day. The places the kids love to go. Everywhere we celebrate our little wins. Now picture life without restaurants. These are the moments we don't want to lose. 10,000 restaurants have already closed. Support restaurants for the times they supported you, whether through safe dining, takeout, or gift.
Parents leave their asymptomatic children alone in a room for 14 days. The province says, obviously, don't do that. A wicked blast of winter weather we saw yesterday is not over yet, as much of the GTA remains under a winter weather travel advisory.
New York's top doctor is asking for patients after 20,000 appointments for COVID-19 vaccines were booked in just 90 minutes. The Maple Leafs get the win in Edmonton, while the Raptors and Pistons will not be playing tonight in Tampa Bay. Sports at 45.
TD Bank Group CEO is set to address the Canadian Club Toronto in a virtual event today, and Zoom has posted a big photo, even as subscriber growth slows.
News time, 12:31.
Time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Craig Gear.
Construction this morning on the eastbound 401. It's moving maintenance. They started off at the Allen. They're going to be heading over to Leslie in the Express. 2 right lanes are blocked off, but not a lot of volume, so not seeing many delays in behind this construction, so that's good news. We have the St. McCowan ramp onto the eastbound 401 shut down for maintenance as well. And on city streets, front has been shut down both directions at Jarvis for a fire investigation. Just watch yourself on the roads. Could get some snow gusts and blowing snow and low visibility and slippery conditions. Mind yourself, especially on the 400, anywhere north of Highway 9, both directions on the 400. Next report is at 12:41 with the forecast. Here's Adam Stiles.
Lake effect snow will continue for the north end of the GTA, and some accumulation is expected, as well as reduced visibility. The wind becoming lighter and shifting. It'll be into the southwest by the afternoon, up to 40 kilometers per hour. High temperature in Toronto near -1. Wind chill today between -7 and -16, especially through the early morning hours. Today, it's a high temperature of -1 in Toronto. Right now in downtown Toronto, we have partly cloudy skies, -9 degrees, feels like -19 with the wind. At Pearson International Airport, we have mainly clear conditions. It feels like -9. 680 News Time, 12:32.
Donwood Park Public School will be closed to students and staff starting today until further notice.
We get more on the whole situation from 680's Julia Rulissi.
This comes after an outbreak of 6 COVID-19 cases at the school, 4 of which have screened positive for a variant of concern. Toronto District School Board spokesperson Ryan Bird tells 680 News their focus right now is on safety.
The masking requirements, physical distancing, cleaning of hands, enhanced cleaning of high-touch surfaces, which we do at all of our schools right across the TDSP.
He says these safety measures were put in place since the beginning of the school year, and just before a majority of students returned to in-person learning a couple of weeks ago, TPH revised the screening tool that students and staff must complete before coming into school each day. Bird says he does not know which variant of concern it is, and it will take some time to figure that out. I'm Julia Rulissi. You're listening to 680 News. Peel Region is recalling a flyer that included some alarming advice about what to do if your child has COVID or is exposed at school. 680's Karen Ciola reports the isolation instructions sparked online backlash from confused and frustrated parents.
The public health flyer suggested kids self-isolate solo. Peel's top doctor, Lawrence Lowe, says, of course, do not leave a child alone in a room for 14 days.
There are recommendations on our website with the recognition that children cannot self-isolate, and they do need to self-isolate with a parent or guardian.
The guidelines come from the province, and the Associate Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Barbara Yaffe, is telling parents to use common sense.
If possible, you wear a mask, you wash your hands well, you make sure the child is obviously not exposing others in the family as much as possible. Hopefully only one or two people need to care for the child during that period.
Dr. Lowe says the handout was meant to offer advice about how to reduce household transmission, noting that's still a significant source of spread in the community. A new flyer will go out this week. I'm Karen Ciola.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News at 12:35. The Raptors were set to play the Detroit Pistons in Tampa today, but the game has been postponed. The NBA says it's due to a series of positive COVID-19 tests for the team. Now, it's currently unknown who among the Raptors, both players and coaching staff, has tested positive for the virus. And it does come after the team's game against the Chicago Bulls was canceled on Sunday as they lacked the 8 players needed to play. The team will undergo contact tracing, and the Raptors-Pistons game is now tentatively set for 7 p.m. on Wednesday.
You're listening to 680 News. A wicked blast of winter weather caused dangerous whiteout conditions along a big stretch of the 400 through Innisfil Monday afternoon, leading to a multi-vehicle collision that shut down the roadway for several hours. But the winter weather is not over just yet, as snow squall warnings are still in place north of the city, while winter weather travel advisories cover the GTA. 680's Michelle Mackey joins us with more.
Winter isn't done yet. 680 meteorologist Jason Fraser says driving will be treacherous for the city of Toronto and much of the GTA.
We could see some brief periods where visibility is cut down, and that's all because of some snow.
While we're only expecting an additional 2 centimeters, falling snow plus wind gusts of 50 to 70 kilometers an hour could bring localized whiteouts. I'm Michelle Mackey.
This is 680 News. It's no surprise that on day one of York Region's push to get its population vaccinated, thousands rushed online to schedule an appointment. In a matter of 90 minutes, though, 20,000 appointments for COVID-19 vaccines in the region for residents 80 and older were already booked up. York's top doctor, Dr. Crane Kurji, says he's asking people, you need to be more patient as more appointments will be added as more doses become available.
Is a great step, and it gives us all a great deal of happiness. We do apologize, though, for the fact that people have to wait so long in terms of getting their bookings. It's really a question of seeing something as being the glass being half full versus half empty. At least we've begun the process.
The vaccines have already begun to go into arms, with all 5 York Region locations offering the Pfizer vaccine. You can see where all the locations are on our website, 680news.com.
680 News Time, 12:37. Now that more vaccines are becoming available, experts are saying we shouldn't start comparing each product. Liza Mean is in Toronto getting reaction.
I understand people's trepidation about, why am I getting the lesser quality vaccine? But it's not clear that it is a lesser quality vaccine.
Pfizer and Moderna have both reported their products to be 95% effective in preventing COVID-19 infections, while clinical trials have found the AstraZeneca vaccine to have less efficacy, believed to be around 62%.
Let's not hang our hats entirely on the clinical trial data. The fact is, we have vaccines.
Epidemiologist Raywat Deonandan says it's important not to compare the vaccines head-to-head, noting some factors to consider during clinical trials. There were different populations completed at different times, and in some cases, there was exposure to new variants. In others, there wasn't.
All of these vaccines, how do you know that? They're 100% good at preventing serious cases.
In Toronto, I'm Liza Mean for City News.
680 News Time, 12:38. While the government's existing support subsidies offer businesses much needed relief, the next phase of those programs is now approaching, and information for future claim periods is actually hazy at best. We get more from 680's Luke Schultz.
The nonprofit representing Canada's independent businesses is calling for more detail and a minimum 30-day notice period, as eligibility criteria for the wage and rent subsidy are set to change on March 14th. Corinne Pullman is the Senior VP of National Affairs at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. She says she's been receiving concerned calls from business owners looking for clarification.
We're just basically asking government to provide some clarity so that businesses can plan. I mean, the end of this period comes in less than 2 weeks, and they want to know, is there going to be a rent subsidy or wage subsidy? How much is it going to be, and how am I going to be able to apply for it?
According to the CFIB, more than half of the businesses here in the country are relying on the Canadian wage subsidy. Only a quarter of our country businesses, though, report making normal sales through the pandemic.
Still to come on 680 News, a look at the gas price. 680 News Time, 12:39.
Hi, I'm Marina Melisani from Nature's Emporium with our president, Joe D'Addario. Joe, what's different about the service at Nature's?
We have knowledgeable and caring staff in every department to help you through these unprecedented days. Our team works around the clock to ensure the shelves are stocked, health questions are answered, and curbside orders are fulfilled 7 days a week. Also, we will have a full-service online store coming